Alright, now I'm doing kind of like a roll on these things right now. So anyway, yeah, so the next anime I like to review, I keep a list of them right here actually, is Madlax. I really hated Madlax. It was so slow, so boring. Anytime I had trouble sleeping at night, that's what I would put on, Madlax. It's so slow and boring, and it gets better around like somewhere between like episode 10 and episode 20. It gets better-ish. And like even then, like it doesn't get that much better. I mean, I would recommend it, kind of, but it was just like a very kind of like, I don't know, like sometimes I would watch the episode and I'd be like, okay, so what was the point of this episode? And then like I would think about it for 12 minutes because most of the time nothing happens, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, the point of this episode was that guy dies. And then like I would be like, okay, and then I'd have to think back some more like, okay, what was the previous episode about? It's like that guy went to that country in search of something, and I'd have to think back and then be like, all right, that guy died because he was in search of a book. And it was like, okay, that's 3 episodes that it took to say this guy's in search of something. He goes to look for it. He goes to a place to look for it, and then he dies. And you know his story fits into the larger context of the overall arching story, but it's like it didn't need 3 episodes to tell that story. You know, that should have been only 1 episode. And I'm sure it was really like 2-ish, but like in terms of like when he was introduced, when he leaves, when he dies, it's just so long. And that's how it was for a lot of characters. And another thing is like I kind of do, but I kind of don't remember who the main villain was. Like there's these 2 guys. One of them has a mask, one of them doesn't. And like at one point the guy with the mask dies, I think. It was all kind of confusing. Sorry, I'm trying not to spoil it, but whoops. Um, and so then like there's magic in the story, but they never really like bring it up unless they need it like to shoot sparks at someone. So yeah. Anyway, let's try to start this off at the beginning. So Madlax is a mercenary in a country that's in a civil war. And I just kind of pictured the country to be in South America. Apparently it's really in Southeast Asia, which I guess, you know, apples and oranges. But really, like, to me it felt very different than Southeast Asia, or at least how I would imagine it. Mostly because, like, everyone was, like, brown looking, which, you know, I guess, you know, Philippines, Indonesia, lots of India, things like that. But, like, to me they looked more like South American brown than necessarily, you know, what I would picture to be Southeast Asia. Because a lot of them had, like, you know, kind of like, sort of wavy hair and things like that. I guess I'm stereotyping Asians right now, but whatever. No, I mean, you know, I just kind of, it came off as more South American than as Southeast Asian to me. I mean, what I would have pictured more is like the architecture to be a lot more different. There was just a lot of like bombed out buildings, and then like there was one main city over that would basically be untouched, and the main city would be like bright over, like, you know, very well lit and things like that. And it just didn't come off as Southeast Asia to me at all. So anyway, but yeah, moving on. So there's Madlax. She's the best mercenary in the world, and she's the bestest ever with a gun and anything else that's military related. And she likes spaghetti or something like that. And like, I don't know, it was really her introduction was awful. Because like I usually don't have a problem like if there's like people with guns in an anime and they're just shooting them like this, not even looking, even if they have their eyes closed and just like bang bang bang, like that doesn't bother me. But what does bother me is, you know, like it went a little bit too extreme, and it was just like she never seemed good other than being told that she's good at what she does, and that was like kind of my main problem with it. Anyway, from there, basically she goes and, you know, oh, in the first episode she meets a guy and he's like, I'd like to take you out on a date sometime. She's like, what will we eat? And he says something like spaghetti. And then he dies. Or at least, I don't know, they don't really like ever clarify if he's dead or not. Like, they definitely heavily imply that he's dead, but I'm just like, you know, they could have handled his death a lot better. Anyway, so I was reading on Wikipedia one time that one of the reasons why the storyline kind of goes off the rails at the end, I didn't actually think the story went off the rails. I mean, I kind of do in some parts, but it seemed more cohesive and like it seemed more of a storytelling than the first, like, 18 episodes or so. And so supposedly the show's writer and the show's director got together and got drunk and they came up with the ending, and that's how the ending was made. And that's why there's a lot of like these things that kind of come together. Even though I kind of like predicted them, like there's this girl and there's Madlax, and you kind of predict that they're mother and daughter or sister and something like that, and you're like, mm-hmm. Anyway, and then there's like this other woman, and like everybody's related to the Civil War country in some way, but none of them are from there. And it's like, okay, with Madlax, it's like, alright, her father was there, and so like, okay, like you can see him bringing his child to a war zone for some reason. And then, everyone is somehow related to that country in some way. And there's another woman whose parents died there, and it's just like, keeps piling it on in a meaningless way that's unrelated. Like, at least with the girl whose parents who died or whatever, like, at least she works for, well, yeah, she works, and like, she cares, like, oh, she's searching for her parents, that's why she works for the company. But it's like, it's mentioned in those like 2 episodes that it takes to get that information out. And then nothing ever again. And it's just like, it wasn't as meaningless as like some other stuff, but it was like, okay, whatever. Anyway, and then like, so eventually we find out that basically they're after these books that have magical powers, and this one guy wants all the magical power for himself, and Madlax and friends go chasing after him into his, demon lair or something like that. Not really demon lair, more like imaginary castle, like El Cazador. Was it El Cazador de la Bruja, I think? It was something like The Burning Witch was the sequel of it. By the way, this fits into this is the middle one of a Girls with Guns trilogy anime. The first one being Noir, the second one being Madlax, and the third one being El Cazador de la Bruja. So I mean that again, kind of fit into why I thought it was South America, because I saw it in order of Noir, El Cazador, and then Madlax, because Madlax took fucking forever to finish. Also, they didn't have all the discs or episodes on Netflix, so. Anyway, so moving on. Like, yeah, it was just kind of like awful overall. And then like, I really have a problem with the ending. So there's Madlax on the phone. I think she's talking to her former employer, and he's saying, I want you back, or something like that, to work for him. And she's like, there's a piece of me in everyone. There's a piece of me even in you. Or something along those lines. And, like, you both do and yet don't understand what she means, because in reality that makes no sense. That's kind of like having sex with someone and then they say like, a part of me is with you now forever. And it's like, no, unless, one of our genitals got ripped off on each other, there's no part of piece of us in each other at all. So, I mean, that kind of really always bothers me, and it's like, alright, yeah, so she means it, emotionally and mentally, but it's like, she doesn't, because that doesn't make sense emotionally or mentally either, because emotionally, the whole series is just like this, just completely flat, and like, I usually don't notice voice acting, or I don't even care about it, because no matter what, I don't even care about acting in general, I just care like, alright, read your lines, and, do whatever you need to do. But like, in this, they're just so monotonous with how they deliver their lines, and it was really bothersome. And I was like reading about it online, and like one review I actually read like praised the voice acting. I was just like, what? How? Like, I don't even like care about voice acting. Like, I think any video game has great voice acting and things like that. But supposedly the voice acting is good, but I completely disagree with that, because emotionally there's like no emotion in their voice. Even when someone dies, they're just like, hello. It's just like there's nothing going on at all. So yeah, and that was the ending. You know, it's typical. Yeah, it's not even like this. You know, and what was it beginning, rising climax, climax, resolution? It was more like that's that's the story pretty much. It's just boring, 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 boring. Kind of interesting, done. That's Madlax. If you enjoy it, and if you have a reason to enjoy it, please like share, because like I'm really baffled at that. Like the whole show just it's really bad. And usually I like anime, and there are things I like about it, like being able to fall asleep to it. But I mean, it was just really awful. And, I hope someone enjoys it.